The first step in doing any kind of quilting, whether it's machine guided or free motion, is a good job of basting. And what I'm going to show you here is how to adhere the backing of your fabric to whatever surface that you're going to lay it on. I've got mine on a table. You can do it on a table, you can do it on the floor. You just want a good hard flat surface to be able to do this on. And I've got my backing for my table runner, and it is stretched taut but not tight. I want it so that it's nice and flat, no puckers, no pleats, no bubbles. It's adhered with this blue painter's masking tape. I like this tape because it is easy to remove. When it's time to take the tape off, you can just take it from off the top and it doesn't pull a lot of threads with it. Regular masking tape will do that. So your first step is to go ahead and put your backing down and tape it well. You can see I've got it taped really well along each of the edges, but you don't want to stretch it so tight that when you release this that it's all going to draw back up. Alright, we're here now at the table again, and I've got all three layers of my table runner on the table. My backing is secured all the way around. I've got the middle layer, the batting, laid down over it, and then I've placed my quilt top in the center of it all, making sure that I can see the edges of my batting and my backing peeking out from the edges of my quilt top. That's very important because I don't want to find out later once I start quilting that my quilt top edge actually goes too far over to one side and I don't have enough batting or backing underneath it. The most important step here when you're putting your quilt top on is when you're getting it nice and flat and before you adhere it with safety pins, is that you don't want to press all the fullness out to the edges, because in doing so what you're doing is distorting the proportions of your quilt and it's no longer going to be a rectangle. It'll be something with rounded edges, it will be wobbly, and it won't lie flat. And so if you have any extra fullness in your blocks, try to keep them perpendicular and at right angles. And you can work that fullness in later with your walking foot. That's why it's so important to have a walking foot on your machine even before you start doing the free motion quilting with your darning foot. So once you've got your top nice and flat, if there's a little fullness in there, that's okay. You're going to start adhering all three layers together with safety pins, small safety pins, not the big ones because the big ones put big holes in your fabric. You're going to put these in an alternating grid about every 3 to 4 inches, and in doing so you're going to skip over any of the major seams that you have because you'll be stitching in the ditch there later and you don't want your presser foot to have to ride over a safety pin. You also want to put your safety pins close to the edges but about a thumb distance away because that's as far as your presser foot, and again you don't want your presser foot to go over any safety pins. And so I'm going to continue putting these safety pins in and I will show you what it looks like. I'm finishing up the last of my safety pins and I'm closing them up. I'm using a small mini screwdriver to do this. It's not usually the tool that is my favorite. My favorite tool is the quick clip, and I highly recommend that. But my quick clip went home with one of my students accidentally in my last class, so I'm without it. So I've got to get to the quilt shop and get another one. But you can see here in this close-up that I've got my pins in about a 3 to 4 inch grid all the way across, and once I've got the pins in, I can tape this masking tape off and I can take my quilt off the table and I'm ready to start. First thing I'm going to do is to put the walking foot on my machine and do some machine guided quilting that will secure all of these layers and also be invisible on the quilt top so that I can take these pins out later on and do free motion quilting without being impeded by all these pins. So the first machine quilting I'm going to do will be around the outside edges of the entire quilt, a 1/4 inch away from the edge of the top, and that secures all the edges so that a top that is 16 by 40 stays 16 by 40 no matter how much free motion quilting you put into it. I'll then quilt around the inside of the border all the way around. And then I'll also I'll stitch in the ditch right here along these two seam lines so that I can secure each block. And once I've done that, I've secured the entire quilt top. I can take these pins out, and because I've basted it so well and it's nice and flat and I've got all the edges secured, then I can do my free motion quilting.